Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast of the Stavro Method, an holistic approach to optimal health and wellness. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Igor of Fitness Solutions Plus. I've interviewed Igor in the past, and it was such a popular episode, I decided to bring him back once again. Here's some info on Igor for those of you that don't know him. Igor is the author of 5 books on fitness, the most recent of which is The Mental Health Prescription. He's also the CEO of one of Toronto's premier personal training companies, Fitness Solutions Plus. Together with his team of fitness professionals, he specializes in helping busy professionals improve their fitness, energy levels, and health. In the past, Igor has been hired to run fitness seminars for IBM, RBC, the Toronto Lawyers Association, Professional Engineers of Ontario, and others. To learn more about Igor, please visit his website at fitnesssolutionsplus.ca. Igor, thanks for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to join us for today's interview. Very excited to have you on board again.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me. This is one of my favorite topics to speak about.
Well, you know what? I read your book. It's fantastic. It covers a lot of things that just a lot of people can certainly benefit from. And there's tons of people out there that are suffering from anxiety and or depression to varying degrees. So let's just start off some general questions to get us going, but then we can get into some more of the specific things.
Sure.
Okay. So why did you decide to write this book?
Well, basically just demand. There was a lot of demand for it. So I've been running my business for 9 years so far, public speaking for 8 of those 9 years. And the first, I'd say 5 or 6 years, it was all about exercise and nutrition misconceptions. Basically the topic of my previous book, Stop Exercising the Way You Are Doing It Now. But about 3-4 years ago, more and more human resources managers started asking me, do you give presentations on mental health? At that time, the answer was no. At that time, people didn't really come to me specifically for mental health. They might have had mental health conditions, but they didn't come to me for help with mental health. They came to me for help with weight loss and toning and the typical personal trainer stuff. But the requests from human resources managers mounted. They grew more and more. Eventually, they asked me, do you do presentations on mental health? And eventually I said the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. So I started to research about mental health and how to exercise and eat properly for better mental health. Hence why I started presenting more and more, to the point where last year in 2018, I started to actually get more and more presentations on mental health, to the point where it's almost neck and neck with my Stop Exercising talks. I think the Stop Exercising is still a little bit further ahead, but it's way up there. And so hence I came out with that book, just because out of demand and more people are having mental health issues, or at least it's more openly talked about. So here we are.
Very nice. Yeah. I love that. It's let's see. So have you personally dealt with any type of anxiety and or depression?
No, personally, I don't have any personal experience with anxiety or depression, just professional experience.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I've read your book and see that it usually takes at least 16 weeks before people start to notice a major difference. And if they continue with your recommendations, is it safe to say they'll no longer deal with it ever again? Or is it one of those things that it's that they should stay on it for life, just be on the safe side?
Well, first of all, the 16-week recommendation, it's more like, it's not, I think exercise is a life sentence. It's not like you do 16 weeks and then you're done. You never have to exercise again, and then you're lean, you're fit, your mental health is improved forever, etc.
It would be nice if that's the case, though.
Wouldn't it? Unless you actually enjoy exercise for the sake of exercise, not for any external reason. But in terms of 16 weeks is the amount of time it takes to see consistent results. However, there are results to be seen with just a single workout. In other words, in response to a single workout, if you do it properly, depression and anxiety is alleviated within a matter of minutes for a matter of a few hours. So that's pretty good. In terms of if they stick with it for 16 weeks, will they never have it again? Well, no, I can't say that. There are way too many variables to say one way or the other. For one thing, what was the reason for the anxiety or depression before? Was it situational, or was it biochemical, or both? If it was situational and the situation clears, well, then 16 weeks later, sure, it's probably going to go away. Although how much the exercise had to do with it, I don't know, probably not that much. Probably just time, the passage of time. Whereas what else are they doing? Are they doing the psychotherapy? Are they taking medications, etc.? It's hard to say or predict whether it's going to go away forever. What I know is a large percentage of people will improve on exercise and nutrition, even if they're already taking medications and using psychotherapy.
Yeah, very cool. It's like, and I like the fact that in previous chats that we've had there, that you're not anti-medication by any means. Like,
Yep, I'm pro the right use of medications. I'm pro the right use of psychotherapy. I'm pro the right use of exercise and nutrition.
yeah, exactly. It's just like, when people become overly dependent on the medication and then they don't look at other tools out there, then that's certainly a particular problem. Like, there's some physicians, they'll put their patients on meds and saying, you know what, you're on this for life and that's it. There's nothing else you can do.
Sure, exactly. And sometimes that may be all that's necessary. I mean, you have to look at with anything at the risk to reward ratio. If the doctor puts the patient on the medication, the patient starts to feel wonderful. There's no side effects, and the other parts of their life are back on track. Well, why change it? Why change that? I mean, it's obviously working. There's no side effects. The risk is minimal. Stick with it. However, if the patient is on medications and still experiencing side effects and the depression and or anxiety is not completely gone, then it makes sense to look at other avenues in addition to medications.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point to bring up. It's like, because sometimes there are some severe side effects, and the side effects are actually worse than the particular situation or challenge that the person's dealing with to begin with.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Let's look at, say, some specific protocols that you recommend. So let's start with the anxiety side of things.
Sure. So to preface this, there are certain parameters to exercise prescription, just like there are parameters to medication prescription. So when a doctor prescribes a medication, there's a lot of precision behind it. There's the name of the medication, the dosage, whether it should be taken with food or away from food, morning or evening. However, when a doctor prescribes exercise, well, it's very vague. A patient doesn't really get any more information than exercise is good for you. It's just like saying a medication is good for you. Well, which medication, what dosage, when, etc.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are also parameters to exercise prescription. It's what's called the FIT principle, F-I-T-T, which stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type. So for anxiety, the prescription in terms of frequency is 3 or 4 days per week. The intensity is moderate, and this is key. If somebody tries to do high intensity, it'll actually make their anxiety worse. This is a case, well, isn't doing some exercise better than doing no exercise? Well, in this case, doing no exercise is better than doing high intensity exercise. So moderate is what's necessary for anxiety. Now, what exactly is moderate intensity? Well, moderate intensity is different for cardio versus strength training. In strength training, moderate intensity is considered to be between 40 and 70% of your one repetition maximum, which translates to somewhere between a weight that you can lift 15 to 25 times or so. For cardio, moderate intensity is considered to be between 60 and 85% of maximal heart rate. So how does somebody know the maximal heart rate? Well, the generally accepted formula is it's 220 minus your age. So let's say our average listener is 50 years old, so 220 minus 50 makes 170. So this person will use between 60 and 85% of 170. So again, moderate intensity for anxiety. So frequency, 3 to 4 days per week. Intensity, moderate. Duration, 30 minutes. So there's 30 minutes is the average, but there's the minimum effective dose, and then there's the optimum dose. Minimum effective dose is 20 minutes. So if you exercise for 15 minutes, you won't really see many changes. Now you might see other changes in cardiovascular fitness, etc., but not anxiety. Now, if you exercise for longer than 20 minutes, you do see better improvements in anxiety until you get to about 40 minutes. Once you cross the 40-minute threshold, you don't really get further benefits. In other words, there's not much of a difference between 40 and 60 minutes for anxiety. There is for cardiovascular improvements. Sure, 60 minutes is better than 40 for cardiovascular, but for anxiety, there is no difference between 40 and 60. There's no harm in 60, but there's no improvement over 60. So there does seem to be a plateau. So that's the time and the type, cardio and strength training are about equal on condition that intensity is the same.
Gotcha. Well, it's good to know though, because like, if a person's dealing with anxiety or depression, sometimes they just don't feel like getting in a workout. It's like, maybe they're just finding themselves in a bit of a rut. So it's like, as long as they've got like, at least that minimal time saying, okay, Igor, like, I'm just not feeling it today. You say, well, can you do 20 minutes? And like, it doesn't have to be on the higher end of that spectrum. Even if just the 20 minutes on the lower end, they're still going to get some benefit out of it. And sometimes it's more of a punch the clock type of workout than anything else.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Just punch the clock, and sometimes small steps in the right direction lead to bigger steps. Maybe you're not feeling it, but then you make a deal with yourself to say, I'll just go for 20 minutes. It's possible that at the end of 20 minutes, you feel a lot better and you say, well, I can do 20 more.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I know sometimes my best workout just came out of my worst days. It just,
Yeah, exactly.
just
Yeah,
went in, started
sometimes the
doing
way
it.
you feel has very little relationship to how you perform. Sometimes you walk in the gym, you feel amazing, but your workouts kind of are flat. Other days you walk in the gym, you're not really feeling it, but you have an amazing workout.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So that's for the anxiety side of it. And say as far as the depression, you're saying there's different protocols with that.
Yes, so there are a lot of similarities between the exercise prescription for anxiety and for depression. The huge difference is in the intensity. So again, parameters of exercise prescription, FITT, fit, frequency, intensity, time, and type. Frequency for depression, 3 or 4 days per week. Intensity is high. Depression is high, anxiety is moderate. Again, very important to distinguish. And again, important to distinguish between cardio and strength training. High intensity and strength training is above 70% of your 1 rep max, which is approximately a weight that you can do 15 times or less, not more, but less. For cardio, 85% of your maximal heart rate or more. Okay, that's intensity. Time is about the same, somewhere between 20 and 60 minutes, and type, no difference between cardio and strength training. So there is our exercise prescription for depression. And again, the only difference really from depression to anxiety is the intensity.
Gotcha. Okay. So it doesn't really make a difference what exercise they're performing, but figure like, generally speaking, larger exercises are more beneficial than smaller ones.
Sure, exactly. In other words, the type of exercise matters very little. Whether you choose to run, you can run at moderate intensity, you can run at high intensity. The same exercise will have different effects based on the intensity. And so a lot of people are wondering, well, why is high intensity good for depression but bad for anxiety? The reason is this. When you cross a certain intensity threshold, your muscles start to hurt. There's not hurt, just the discomfort of exertion. You start to breathe hard, you sweat more, etc. Once you cross that threshold, your brain starts to release pain-blocking hormones called endorphins. So yes, they block physical pain, but they also block emotional pain. Largely, physical and emotional pain is controlled by the same part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. And if you release the endorphins, yeah, you feel better physically. You also feel better emotionally, mentally, etc. So that's why it works for depression, but why doesn't high intensity work for anxiety and in fact makes it worse? Well, because for the same reason that endorphins are released, because it's uncomfortable. That discomfort to somebody with anxiety makes them more anxious. It's daunting. So they know that they're going to exercise, their muscles are going to burn, they're going to be out of breath, they're going to be sweating, and so etc. So they know it's going to be uncomfortable. They can anticipate it, and anxiety is worried about the future. Depression is worried about the past.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so that's why it's high intensity is good for depression, bad for anxiety.
Yeah, because you don't want to risk just a further severe anxiety attack if somebody's already
exactly. You could,
you
could very well trigger a panic attack if you have anxiety and you exercise in high intensity.
Wow, that's certainly good to know. So, what about people that just kind of like you'll have a little bit of both, and not necessarily a 50-50 split, but
Yeah.
how would you just kind of like tailor the workout if somebody's coming in saying like, okay, well today I'm feeling out of sorts.
Yeah, I hear you. And a lot of people do have both anxiety and depression. So what do you do in that case? So we use research kind of as a baseline. It's a good starting point, but to get the research reports averages. To get to an average, some people will by necessity be above average and others will be below average. And so that's where we start, but then we actually individualize using simple assessment tools. In the case of anxiety and depression, we have a very quick, very simple 5-symptom questionnaire that we have our clients fill out. It just assesses 5 different emotions, things like anger, sadness, etc. I assess them on a 0 to 5 scale in terms of severity. Let's say what we're looking at is anger. In other words, if you're feeling no anger whatsoever, you'll circle a 0. If you're feeling extremely angry, you'll circle 5. And we have our clients fill out that questionnaire, which literally takes 10, 15 seconds right before our workout, and we have them fill it out again after the workout. If we see the scores have improved, we know we figured out the right protocol for them. If we see the scores are the same or worse, we test out something different. We'll test out a different intensity, or we'll test out cardio versus strength training, etc. And so If they come on one day and they have anxiety, we may have an anxiety workout for them. If on the other day they feel like depression is the dominant thing that they're feeling, then we'll have a depression workout on that day. And so that's how you use exercise in a targeted way to improve mental health.
Very good. Well, I like the fact that, that you're not very rigid with your approach. You just say it depends on what's going on with that individual for that particular time.
Exactly. I mean, exercise is not a religion. Nutrition is not a religion. I have no allegiance to any single methodology. My allegiance is to my clients and to their results.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, say on the topic of nutrition, so what nutritional approach would you recommend?
What nutritional, sorry?
What nutritional approach would you recommend with somebody that's dealing with anxiety or depression? Like, are there overlaps
Sure.
between the two, or are there going to
Yeah,
be some differences?
so there are very minor differences between anxiety and depression when it comes to nutrition. There are actually more similarities than there are differences. So in my book, I cover the two most common misdiagnoses of both. So the two most common misdiagnoses of anxiety are hyperthyroidism, fast thyroid, as well as hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. With depression, is hypothyroidism, which is a slow thyroid, and also low blood sugar. So that's one they have in common. So first of all, I ask my clients to make sure that their depression or anxiety is really depression or anxiety and not a misdiagnosis. The reason that it's misdiagnosed so often is because of testing. Testing isn't really done properly, both for thyroid and for low blood sugar. So let's first make sure that depression or anxiety is really depression or anxiety. Once we clear that, we realize that it's actually depression or anxiety and not something else. Then for both of them, I recommend first of all running a food sensitivity panel. So sensitivities, unlike allergies, are subtle and delayed. Allergies are severe and immediate. For instance, you eat a peanut, within a matter of seconds, your throat shuts. You eat shellfish, within a matter of minutes to hours, your skin breaks out at hives, etc. That's an allergy.
Yeah.
Sensitivities, because they're subtle and delayed, we may not know we have them. And often, it's to foods that we eat most frequently, even if they're otherwise healthy foods. So yes,
Right.
you could have a sensitivity to spinach. You could have a sensitivity to turkey or chicken or something like that.
Yeah, it could be certified organic and you'll
Yep,
eat it raised
absolutely.
properly. And yeah,
It'll be perfectly fine, just not fine for you. And
correct.
so I strongly recommend running food sensitivity testing, identifying what the food sensitivities are, and removing those. Additionally, another test that I strongly recommend is something called the CDSA, Comprehensive Digestive Stool Analysis, which looks at what's going on in your small and large intestines. More and more over the past few years, there's been more talk about what's called the gut-brain axis, meaning that what's in your small and large intestines influences what's in your brain. By now, it's pretty much a mainstream statistic that 70% of the brain chemical serotonin is not made in the brain. It's made in the small intestine, called serotonin. So if our digestive system is not working properly, well, it makes sense that our brain isn't working properly. If there's not enough serotonin in the GI system, there's not enough serotonin in the brain either. And so very important to identify what's going on in the small and large intestines and do something about it if there is something to do. I'm not a proponent of the fact that everyone with mental health has GI disturbances. Everyone with mental health has a thyroid issue. That's where testing is necessary because you can't say 100% all the time, or you can't say 100% none of the time. You have to use on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, exactly. Now, having said that, there will be no harm to eating probiotic-rich foods anyways. Whether you need to supplement with probiotics in specific quants, that's what's going to require testing. So those are commonalities between anxiety and depression. The differences are fairly minor. With anxiety, often a caffeine addiction could trigger symptoms of anxiety. That could be the root cause. So in my book, I was looking through a lot of studies, and I came across one study where people who were hospitalized for anxiety, that's how severe it was, for 3 weeks they had complete caffeine removal because unfortunately in the hospital the staffing is strictly control the diet. So for 3 weeks they had complete caffeine removal. During that time, completely, for like 80+% of them, the anxiety completely went away. After 3 weeks, caffeine was reintroduced, and within a matter of a day or two, all the symptoms of anxiety returned.
Well, and I can definitely relate to that if I can jump in, my friend, because the thing is, for a period of time, and I know better, but just because I know better doesn't mean I always do better. But I had a challenge with just energy drinks in general, and I'm not going to name any particular brands here because it's not the company that always the problem. It's just me consuming products that I shouldn't be having in the first place.
Right.
So if I don't have it for the longest time, like, maybe the occasional can, like, I feel okay. I think it'll improve my mental alertness. If I'm on it for too long, the caffeine and just the extra sugar in it, I just start to feel anxious. And if I'm
Yeah,
on it even longer than that, then I start getting a depressive side as well.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
just,
exactly.
so I find it's like, okay, well, if I need to a caffeine fix, I'm better off with the green tea rather than the energy drinks. It's a
Sure,
healthier
and
option for me.
exactly. And what green tea contains in it, in addition to caffeine, is something called theanine, which is a calming amino acid, which kind of counterbalances the effects of caffeine. So it makes you feel alert without being jittery. Whereas
Exactly. Like
in
that whole
coffee
squirrel thing, like, it was too much going on, and it's like, it's
yeah,
challenging to stay focused. So I can imagine what
exactly.
somebody has a drug addiction, what they're going through.
Yep, that
So imagine
absolutely.
energy drinks to the next level.
That's exactly it. Yeah, in coffee and in energy drinks, caffeine is unopposed by theanine, so you do get that jittery and energetic and alert and focus, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So that's anxiety. With depression, caffeine seems to be okay, but the challenge is alcohol. And I know people are going to hate me on this podcast. Well, don't drink caffeine or alcohol. What kind of a life is that? Well, it
And
might be
you're
a life
Russian
without it.
too.
Yeah, exactly. It might be a life without anxiety or depression. Um, Caffeine is a natural central nervous system depressant, and so if it slows down your nervous system, you may have the symptoms of depression. So those are both worth giving a shot. So again, in order of importance, first identify that it's a proper diagnosis, that it's not a thyroid issue or low blood sugar.
Mhm.
Assuming it's not either one of those, and then run food sensitivity testing for both of them, run stool analysis for both of them, and then anxiety, no caffeine, depression, no alcohol. Now, I kind of gloss over in this podcast the testing for thyroid and hypoglycemia. But if somebody wants to get the full details of proper testing, proper nutrition for hypoglycememia and hyperthyroidism, they can just download a free digital copy of my book by going to the link that I created for your listeners, which is fitnesssolutionsplus.ca/Stavru, STAVROU.
If we could have spent a little bit of time on the testing side, that would be beneficial for the audience. Like, I'm sure it's not going to go as in depth as your book does, but
Sure.
it's just nice to get people to get a rough idea of what's out there, because a lot of times we put so much faith in our physician, where they're almost godlike in a sense, and I
Yeah.
put the quotes around it, that oftentimes people don't ask about specific tests. Like, I'm fortunate with the physician that I go to, it just is like, we have a conversation and saying, like, here's what I'm looking for, doc. What are your thoughts on it? I may need it, I may not. But, like,
Right.
at least that dialogue's there. But so many times you just go there, it's like they just test whatever they want to test and they leave it at that.
Sure, sure. So let's talk about thyroid testing first. So typically the only test that is run is TSH. Sometimes T4 will also be run, but to get a comprehensive picture of what's going on in the thyroid, you need a whole lot more than that. So the test that I ask my clients to run is TSH, which is standard, total T4, free T4, total T3, free T3, T3 uptake, reverse T3, anti-TPO antibodies, and anti-TGB antibodies, and lastly, TBG.
If you can kind of explain in layman's terms what the different tests mean and what you're looking for.
Sure. Yeah, so getting the test done is nice, but if you don't know what any of this stuff is, it's useless. So it's the interpretation that really matters and ultimately what to do about it. So let's start with TSH. TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. So yes, it has the word thyroid in it, but it's not actually a thyroid hormone. TSH is released by a part of the brain called the pituitary, which is the master hormone regulator. That hormone TSH tells the thyroid to release actual thyroid hormones. The actual thyroid hormones are T3 and T4. However, they don't just float around in the blood by themselves. They need what's called a carrier protein. Imagine this. You need to go somewhere, so you get inside a taxi, but to get inside the building, you have to leave the taxi. Well, same thing with thyroid hormones, and for that matter, every other hormone. Hormones use carrier proteins. The carrier protein that thyroid uses is called TBG, thyroid binding globulin. And so that's why there's total T4 and free T4 and total T3 and free T3. Total T4 and T3 measures how much thyroid hormone is bound to the TBG, to the taxi, so to speak. And free T3 and free T4 measure how much of the hormone is unbound and readily available to be used by the cells. So that's those 5 tests. The next thing I asked was about TBG, which is where we're actually doing a direct measurement of the thyroid binding globulin. Then T3 uptake, in other words, how much of the thyroid hormone is physically going inside the cell. And the last 2 tests I mentioned are anti-TPO and anti-TGB antibodies. TGB is not to be confused with TBG.
Okay.
So what those 2 measure is whether the immune system is producing what's called antibodies in response to thyroid hormone. In other words, is the immune system attacking the thyroid? In which case, the treatment would be different than if there was no antibodies. And about 80 or 90% of the time, it is an autoimmune condition when the thyroid is going wrong. So if the antibodies are related, then the treatment should be aimed at the immune system and not the thyroid. So that's an explanation of proper thyroid testing. On the topic of proper blood sugar testing, the challenge with testing for low blood sugar is that there is no diagnostic agreement on what exactly is low blood sugar. Mm-hmm. There's a very clear distinguishing line of what's high. You go country to country, city to city, everybody agrees what is high blood sugar. That is a fasting blood glucose of 7.0 millimoles per liter and an A1C of 0.065. That is well established. With low blood sugar, there is diagnostic challenges figuring out how low is low. Some researchers say 3.3 millimoles per liter, others say 2.8, others say 1 millimole per liter below that person's fasting, and others say it's not about the total quantity, it's about the speed. It could be that the blood sugar is coming down too fast, even if it's in the normal range, but if it's causing hypoglycemic symptoms, that's enough to diagnose hypoglycemia. So 4 different opinions. So that's what makes diagnosis tough.
Yeah, because a lot of times people do feel out of sorts and think, they do the whole pricking on their finger, draw the blood. It's like, well, I'm in a normal range, and I'm putting quotes around it again. Yeah. But like you're saying, it's coming down too quickly, and that's what's throwing them off. Not to say it's not going to stabilize within the normal range.
Yes.
But yeah.
Exactly. So it could be the speed and not the amount. So that's how you that's proper testing for both thyroid and hypoglycemia.
Gotcha. Okay, if we can backtrack a little bit, because you're always a wealth of information, and I'm engrossed in the interview. At the same time, it's like, there's certain things I'd like just a little bit more of an explanation on.
Sure.
So like, you're talking about T4 and T3. So like, what are the differences, say, between those 2 tests?
So the thyroid gland itself makes both T4, which is called thyroxine, and T3, which is triiodothyronine. Largely, it is about 80% T4 and 20% T3. T3 is the active hormone. T4 is what's called a prohormone. In other words, that's what comes before the hormone. However, T4 needs to get converted into T3 in order for it to become active. So T4 is kind of like a reservoir for where T3 can come from.
I see. Okay. And also what you mentioned earlier, it's like, there's total, that's in the bloodstream. There's also the free amount.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, yeah. So in a sense there, it's like, somebody could have a lower total, but a higher free amount, which is certainly available to what their body can use at the time.
Yep, yeah, so exactly. So the ultimate measurement is free T3. That's the ultimate most important thing in terms of what's going on in your body. If your total T3 is high and your free T3 is normal, no problem. If your total T3 is low and your free T3 is normal, again, no problem. Ultimately, it's what's happening with the free T3.
Okay, so there's not really an ideal ratio then, is there?
I mean, the best ratio is your own ratio of when you are feeling well, of when you're healthy. Hence the necessity of annual physicals. Let's say at 20 years old, you're good, 25, you're good, 30, you're good, 35, things start to go awry. Now, if you've never had an annual physical before, you don't really have a record of when you were feeling good. However, let's say you go back at 35, you're not feeling good, but at 30 you were, you can actually look back at your records from 30 and see what was your range back then.
Well, that's a very good point, because the thing is sometimes physicians are kind of stuck with their textbook definitions, and it's nice to have the norm for the average person that's out there. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's optimal for everybody.
Yes, normal isn't optimal.
Yeah, because I could be around homeless people and okay, I'm in great shape around them, but obviously they're going through a lot of things here. They're not at the same nutritional level that I am. And it's they're not getting enough sleep, that type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, everything is relative. And if you compare yourself to a sick population, you'll seem well, even if you're not dead.
Exactly. Very nice. So what about on the topic of supplementation? What can you tell us about that?
Sure. For anxiety, so let's put it this way, there's what I call anxiety specific supplements, and then there are supplements that aren't for anxiety per se, but will make anxiety better. And the same is true for depression. So what do I mean by that? For instance, low iron is often implicated in depression. And so iron is not really an antidepressant supplement. And yet, if somebody is low in iron and you give them iron, it'll improve their depression, even though, again, it's not an antidepressant. That's what I mean by that. So likewise, probiotics are not really specifically for anxiety or for depression. They're for correcting gastrointestinal imbalances. And so when somebody who does have some kind of GI issue, they take probiotics, the right kind of probiotics for their issue, it will have very impressive anti-anxiety, antidepressant benefits. However, if somebody has no issues with their GI and has been tested and they take probiotics, it will not do anything. No harm necessarily, but no benefit.
Gotcha.
So that's what I mean on the supplement side of things. So ultimately, if you really want very precise supplements, well, no, I mean, I'm a scientific guy, you've got to test for it. Now, specifically for anxiety and for depression, well, on the anxiety side of things, a few things have been tried that's been true. The most common one is a herb called kava, Kava, and B vitamins. As well, there is an adaptogenic herb called ashwagandha, which has a decent amount of research behind it, which has anti-anxiety benefits.
Mhm.
On the depression side of things, there are no specific supplements, but B vitamins go a long way. As well, different adaptogenic herbs are good. Things like holy basil and serenogen.
Gotcha.
Those two work very well for depression.
Well, I like the way that you explain it. It's almost like gas in your gas tank in a sense, as far as like what the body needs. So if my gas tank is three-quarters full, adding a little bit more gas isn't going to make too much of a difference. But if I'm running on fumes, that's say
Yeah.
$5 of gas, because like mean that I'm actually able to move somewhere.
Exactly. So it's just based on your own personal deficiencies, which need to be identified via testing. The way we test is like me personally with my staff and my clients, is we first start with a questionnaire of symptoms. Like 85 or more % of the time, that's enough for us to start the proper approach towards improving anxiety and depression. Only about 10 or 15% of the time do I actually require blood work. But again, a lot of the times people get paralysis by analysis. They think if I don't have all these tests, blood work and organic acids and stool analysis and everything else, then there's no point. Well, no, even symptoms alone often, not always, but often, give us a big starting point of where we should focus.
Well, and like, that's great though, because the thing is, like, one aspect is certainly the paralysis by analysis, but another thing is like, sometimes depends on the person's financial situation. It's saying, Igor, what do I really need to do right now to at least start me getting out of this particular rut, like, and on the path of wellness. And then
Sure.
maybe as you start to feel better, saying it's like, okay, I'm feeling better, I'm more productive at work, and then like, I can allocate more resources into additional testing. So I like the fact that you start off the questionnaire and just break it
Yep.
down to phase depending on what the person needs at the time.
Exactly. The more data we have, the better. Of course, there are both time and financial limitations to that. Although blood work is covered by OHIP, the rest of the stuff is not. Stool analysis is certainly not, and neither is organic acids testing. If it's in their budget, we'll use it. If it's not in their budget, we still have a lot of other information we can go by.
Very good. Yeah, it's unfortunate the other tests are not covered by OHIP, but it is what it is. So you have to work with the system and be thankful these OHIP does cover a fair amount of things too.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then as far as the nutritional testing, so there's particular ones that you recommend that are more accurate than others, would you say?
Yes. So we want to know what's the nutrient status of any given person. Two of the best tests are organic acids profiles, OAT, as well as something called SpectraCell, which tells you exactly what's going on inside your cells. You can also test for some nutrients with blood. Not all nutrients are easily tested through blood. But that's a good way to go. Some of them are covered by OHIP, for example, magnesium, zinc, chromium, B12, vitamin D, iron are easily testable and available and free through OHIP. The others, things like For instance, molybdenum, things like B vitamins, things like vitamin C are not easily tested through blood, in which case organic acids makes more sense. It's a urinary test.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I was fortunate enough that I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here for our audience, but Igor was training me a couple summers ago to help out with my challenge with the whole high blood pressure side of it. And phenomenal results with that as far as like a very specific protocol to follow. And what I liked is we did do some testing with the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. And what I really liked about that is they broke the results down into one of three categories. So it could fall in a red, a yellow, or a green. And goes back to what Igor was saying earlier, that you could be eating so-called healthy, but doesn't mean it's healthy for you.
Yes.
So in my case, and what Igor was mentioning earlier, say somebody has a peanut allergy or a challenge with shellfish, with the peanut, the throat constricts, sinus congestion, runny nose, watery eyes, that type of thing. The good thing is it's immediate, so you know what it is that you did. But the bad thing is it's often fatal.
Yeah.
You have to watch out for that. So
right.
In my case, I'm better off with a can of Coke with pure sugar in it rather than a glass of milk. At least with the Coke, it's type 2 diabetes several years later, but the glass of milk, I'm not quite anaphylactic, say someone with the peanut allergies, but I'm not a happy person to be around either. So that's why I want to look at it and build a nutritional protocol around it, if I'm interpreting what you're saying properly.
Absolutely, that is 100% correct.
Yeah, very good. Are there any other particular things that you'd recommend here? So we talked about the anxiety protocol, the depression protocol, nutritional aspects for both, the supplementation side of it, and the testing.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you think that our audience could benefit from this particular episode?
Sorry, say the last sentence again.
Saying, is there anything else that you'd like to add there, or do you think we pretty well covered the main parts in your book?
I'm so sorry. Zoom is a little bit glitchy right now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, Zoom got a little techy at times here. Yeah, I'm just saying, did we cover the main aspects in your book, or is there anything else that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, we covered the major points. We've covered extensively the exercise for anxiety and depression. We've covered extensively the both the testing and the nutrition side of things. Again, I want to emphasize everything needs to be individualized. That's why there's an entire chapter in my book devoted to individualization. And to individualize, you have to track, as I say, with anything, with fat loss, with muscle gain, with endurance improvements, and with mental health. If you're not assessing, you are guessing. You absolutely have to test yourself. And again, considering this is a free test, which is just a questionnaire of 5 symptoms, you can easily do this by yourself. And again, just go to my book, which is free for your listeners. And in chapter 5, they can find the questionnaire.
Fantastic. And what's the best way for our audience to find out about the various products and services that you offer?
Well, there's 2 ways. The easiest way is to subscribe to my newsletter, which is complimentary. And along with it, if they subscribe to it, they'll also get a free copy of this book that we're talking about right here. They can do that by going to fitnesssolutionsplus.ca/your last name, Stavrou, STAVROU. And if somebody lives in the Greater Toronto area and they want to inquire about working with us personally, just go to fitnesssolutionsplus.ca.
Fantastic. And just for our audience, if you didn't catch the whole URL and things like that, I'm going to have it in the description box below this video. So Igor, you're always a wealth of information. I know we can be going on for a considerable amount of time here, but I figure let's just save some things for the next interview. So
sounds good.
I'd like to thank you once again for taking time out of your extremely busy schedule just to join us for today's episode. And I certainly look forward to our next interview down the road.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, George.
Thanks, Igor. And everybody, that wraps up another episode of the Stavrou Method, an holistic approach to optimal health and wellness. Stay tuned for our next episode. Yep.